The greatest weapon ever invented doesn't fire bullets. It doesn't need gunpowder, steel, or a trigger. It travels at the speed of a decision, which means it moves faster than any missile ever built. It's a lie. A perfectly constructed, strategically delivered lie. And throughout history, the armies that mastered the art of deception won battles they had no right winning by conventional analysis. Today, we're breaking down 5 categories of military deception: how they work, why they work, and why the human brain, no matter how trained, remains vulnerable to every single one. Category 1. Deception by terrain. This one requires no lie at all. You simply choose the battlefield, and that choice deceives your opponent about the nature of the fight they're entering. Thermopylae, 480 BC. We know this story. Leonidas chose a mountain pass specifically because it negated the Persian advantage: unlimited numbers, cavalry superiority, missile weapons. All of these Persian advantages became irrelevant in a space 15 meters wide. The Persians didn't walk into a trap in the traditional sense. They walked into terrain that silently redefined the terms of the engagement. They thought they were bringing overwhelming force. They were actually bringing equivalent numbers, because only equivalent numbers could fit through the pass. The deception didn't require a lie. It required choosing where to fight and letting your enemy's assumptions do the rest. This principle, deceive through environment rather than through words, shows up in guerrilla warfare, urban combat, and naval strategy throughout history. The Japanese defense of Iwo Jima in 1945, the Viet Cong tunnel systems in Vietnam. Both were versions of the same insight. Make the terrain fight for you. Let the enemy discover too late that the battlefield isn't what they expected. Category 2. Deception by psychology. The Mongol feigned retreat. We've covered this in 2 previous videos, but as a psychological mechanism, it deserves its own dedicated analysis here. Why does the feigned retreat work so reliably against trained soldiers who have been specifically warned about it? Because it exploits something that training can suppress but never fully eliminate: the predator instinct. Humans, like all primates, have a deeply wired response to fleeing prey. When something runs from you, your nervous system generates an urge to chase. In calm, rational analysis, you recognize the trap. But in the heat of battle, with adrenaline flooding your system and your enemy visibly running, your body reacts faster than your brain can override it. The Mongols didn't just understand tactics. They understood neuroscience centuries before the word existed. Modern military psychologists study this exact mechanism. The gap between intellectual knowledge and instinctive response under acute stress is one of the fundamental challenges of military training. The Mongols found it and exploited it so reliably that defeated armies warned future armies, who then still fell for it. Category 3. Deception by identity. The Trojan horse and its descendants. The Trojan horse is the original template. Present yourself as something harmless, be invited inside, then act. Whether the literal wooden horse happened exactly as described is historically uncertain. The concept has been used in countless variations since. In World War II, the British ran Operation Mincemeat. They dressed a corpse as a British officer, planted fake documents on the body, and arranged for the body to wash ashore in Spain, where German intelligence was active. The fake documents described a planned Allied invasion of Greece and Sardinia. Germany reinforced those locations. The real invasion targeted Sicily, which was far less defended as a result. An entire strategic campaign redirected by one dead body carrying a briefcase of lies. The Trojan horse's essential mechanism, make your deception too good not to believe, appeared in 1943 as clearly as it did in 1200 BC. What makes this category so powerful is the human tendency toward confirmation bias. We believe information that confirms what we already suspect or hope is true. The Greeks leaving a gift was believable because the Trojans wanted the war to be over. The British documents were believable because the Germans had independent reasons to suspect an attack elsewhere. Good deception doesn't fight the target's existing beliefs. It uses those beliefs as delivery vehicles. Category 4. Deception by information. Operation Bodyguard and D-Day. We covered Operation Bodyguard in the military traps video, but here it's worth examining as an information architecture. The challenge the Allies faced was this. The Germans knew an invasion was coming. They had roughly 60 possible landing sites to defend. They couldn't fully reinforce all of them. The Allied task wasn't to hide the invasion. It was to make the Germans concentrate their defenses on the wrong location. To do this, the Allies ran a coordinated multi-channel deception. Fake radio traffic generated by real radio operators, creating the electronic signature of an army group that didn't exist. Inflatable tanks and aircraft positioned where German reconnaissance planes could photograph them. Controlled double agents feeding disinformation through channels the Germans trusted. A headquarters for the fake army group staffed with real personnel. Under Patton, the commander the Germans most feared and expected to lead the main invasion. Every channel the Germans used to gather intelligence was simultaneously feeding them the same false picture. When enough independent sources confirm the same story, the human tendency is to believe it. That is the deepest principle of information deception. Not one convincing lie, a whole ecosystem of lies that reinforce each other. D-Day succeeded not just because of the soldiers on the beaches. It succeeded because for the critical weeks before and after, Hitler was defending the wrong coast. Category 5. Modern deception, electronic warfare and cyber operations. The principles don't change, the tools do. Today's military deception operates at frequencies and speeds invisible to the human eye. Electronic jamming creates false radar returns, making a single aircraft appear as a formation of 20, or making an entire fleet invisible to radar. GPS spoofing sends false positioning data to enemy navigation systems, convincing a ship or missile it's somewhere it isn't. Cyber operations can quietly alter the information flowing through an enemy's command systems, making their commanders believe the battle is proceeding differently than it is. In 2007, Israel conducted Operation Orchard, an airstrike on a suspected Syrian nuclear facility. Syria's air defense radar system didn't sound a single alarm during the approach. Israeli electronic warfare had created a false picture in Syria's radar network. The planes flew in. The facility was destroyed. Syria didn't know it was happening until it was over. The technology was new. The principle, make your enemy believe the battlefield is different from what it actually is, was identical to Thermopylae. 5 categories. 1. Underlying truth. Military deception doesn't work because soldiers are stupid. It works because the human brain, under stress, with incomplete information, in real time, makes decisions based on the most coherent story available. The best deceptions are the ones that make the false story more coherent than the true one. That's not a military insight. That's a psychology insight. And it applies everywhere. Drop a comment. Which deception in history do you think was the most brilliant? Operation Bodyguard? The Mongol feigned retreat? Something I didn't cover? I read everyone. Subscribe and see you next week. One last case worth covering because it's the most psychologically interesting deception in modern history. The double agent. Not a fake army, not electronic jamming. A human being who appears to be working for one side while actually working for the other. During World War II, British intelligence ran Operation Double Cross. They captured virtually every German spy sent to Britain. Then they turned them, fed German intelligence a controlled stream of disinformation. At its peak, MI5 had turned over 120 agents. The Germans believed they had an intelligence network inside Britain. They did. They just didn't control it. Every piece of intelligence Germany received from Britain throughout the critical years of the war was either false, misleading, or timed to arrive too late to be useful. The Normandy deception was the final product of years of this infrastructure. Germany's confidence in its intelligence was actually the weapon used against it. They trusted their sources because their sources had never been wrong before. And they'd never been wrong before because British intelligence was carefully managing what they got right, saving up credibility like currency to spend it all on one decisive lie. That is the most sophisticated level of deception. Not just one lie, a years-long investment in being trusted, so that the one lie that matters will be believed.